A U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has met with the foreign ministers of all 5 Central Asian former Soviet republics in Kazakhstan. His trip to Astana comes days after the first anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It is his first visit to the region as the top U.S. diplomat. And Mr Blinken is aiming to connect with the region that is most directly affected by Russia's war in Ukraine. It is said he will seek to deter the former Soviet nations from supporting Russian President Vladimir Putin in the conflict. Kazakhstan, for one, has publicly pushed back against territorial claims made by Moscow. But the 5 republics have mostly refrained from criticizing Russia. The long-standing relations between the Central Asian nations and Russia have come under greater scrutiny since the invasion, but they have not rallied behind President Putin. Kazakhstan, which shares the longest land border with Russia, has welcomed Russians fleeing military conscription. It has also called for a diplomatic resolution to the war in accordance with international law. We have more with Jagriti Dave. She is reporting live from Washington, D.C. Jagriti, what was discussed during Mr Blinken's meeting with the president of Kazakhstan?
Well, according to a statement from the United States State Department, President Tokayev talked about engagement with the United States on investment, security and trade, and forming a partnership with the United States on those fronts. President Tokayev also thanked the United States for its firm support for Kazakhstan's sovereignty and territorial integrity and its independence, clearly issues that are at the forefront following Russia's invasion of Ukraine and other ex-Soviet states. So these are clearly issues that are under discussion for Secretary Blinken as he goes on his first tour of Central Asia. For the United States' part, Secretary Blinken talked about welcoming high-level engagement with President Tokayev, and that's clearly something that the United States is looking at to initiate those high-level engagements with Central Asian countries in the wake of this war that Russia has waged in Ukraine, which has really caused some concern among these 5 states.
And what are the expectations and hopes for the remainder of Mr Blinken's tour of Central Asia?
Well, I think the real aim is there to show that the United States is a reliable partner for these countries. Now, if we look at what's happening, Russia is clearly leaning on this sphere of influence that it sees itself at the center of with these 5 former Soviet states. As Western sanctions start to bite, it's looking elsewhere for financial support. And really, the United States is trying to prevent Russia from getting more financial support, potentially even military support that would allow it to continue waging its war in Ukraine. Obviously, the United States is trying to counter this by supporting Ukraine on the battlefield, but Russia is clearly looking elsewhere. We've talked many times about how its close relationship with China is a point of concern for the United States. And clearly, the United States doesn't want Russia to look elsewhere, including these 5 countries. So it's trying to really push for a partnership itself with these countries to perhaps persuade them not to support Russia. But it's got to be clear-eyed as well. They are a part of Russia's sphere of influence. And as you mentioned, they haven't explicitly condemned the invasion. So they're unlikely to make a clean break from Russia. But I think this is all about trying to tip the scales in Ukraine's favor by stopping Russia from getting more support that would allow it to continue its conflict in Ukraine.
As always, many thanks, Jagriti Dave reporting from Washington.